It all began for me in the customer service department. When I came to work for Manatech in 1995, I had no idea how my life story would be interwoven with the story of Manatech. And what a journey it's been. So I invite you to join me for a quick look at this incredible story through the eyes of our founder, Sam Castor. And believe me, in this story, the best is yet to come.
I believe that there's a deep desire within the heart of everyone to have their life count for a purpose bigger than themselves. That's how it was for us in 1993. We prayed for God to bring us something that we could do that would bring honor to Him and truly bring value into the lives of others.
God laid on my heart that we would birth a Joseph Company, a company of provision that would touch the lives of people in all nations.
At first, we didn't know what that meant. But what we did know is that there was a sense of destiny, a special calling for us in the venture we were starting. We just had no idea how it would unfold. During this time, I'd been consulting with a group of healthcare professionals who'd been active in launching a new integrative approach to their patient care. This was in response to a growing consumer demand and the volume of evidence that was clearly showing better patient outcomes. I believe that this trend was just beginning and could become dynamic in its continued growth. I founded Manatech to help meet this explosive new market demand. We were committed to bring to market the very best science-based products. The healthcare professionals I worked with encouraged me to examine a new body of science that had been published on the discovery of the beneficial ingredient in aloe vera. There was a long history of health applications around aloe vera, but there had been a lack of solid science. Aloe vera gel had shown to be quite unstable in its raw form. A research scientist named Dr. Bill McAnally was able to stabilize the gel and discovered the beneficial ingredient was a long-chain carbohydrate containing a sugar called mannose. His company called this new product Manipole, and they had already received over 100 international patents on this new product. Dr. McAnally had discovered a true scientific breakthrough, but the company had failed miserably in their efforts to retail this product. As a result, we were able to negotiate an exclusive agreement to market Manipole as a dietary supplement in 1994. This was the industry's first stabilized aloe vera product and served as the core technology we used to launch our company. And then we held on for an incredible ride that blew past everyone's expectations.
Talk about mighty things coming from small beginnings. We began to assemble a group of salespeople who really shouldn't be called salespeople. They came to realize that somehow they had been given something that was having an incredible impact on the quality of life of their family and friends, and wild horses couldn't hold them back.
You know, when I began seeing the impact of this product, I just knew in my heart this was going to play a key role in fulfilling the vision we had been given as a company of provision. Shortly after we began Manatech, Dr. McAnally came to me and said, well, I jumped at that offer and immediately hired him as our Chief Science Officer. You know, we both realized that our destinies had been joined together for a reason.
There always seemed to be things that happened that you wouldn't expect that were just right at the moment. It's almost like we're guided. This is a company of destiny, and what is needed shows up at the right time.
There are a lot of meanwhiles in the Manatech story. You know, those times where it seemed like we had come to an insurmountable roadblock. But meanwhile, God had been working in the background all along, moving the pieces around without us knowing it. And then the answer shows up in an unexpected way. We often refer to the Jewish word bashert, that means meant to be, to help give perspective to these stories. Dr. McAnally also believed that there was a higher purpose at work here, that our lives and our work were being tied together for a reason. He tells the story of coming to a dead end in the carbohydrate research he was doing and simply crying out, "I need some help, Lord, if this technology is supposed to go forward." Well, shortly after that, a UPS driver stopped at his office on a Saturday morning in the middle of a driving rainstorm and brings this researcher who had been dropped at the wrong location for a job interview. He'd been wandering around out there in the rain looking for a phone. The UPS driver had picked him up and dropped him at Dr. McAnally's lab to see if he could use his phone. You know, in God's providence, Dr. McAnally discovered in a brief conversation that this man was one of the few people in the world with training in carbohydrate structuring that could provide the exact skills he needed. Well, he hired him on the spot and the project was able to be completed. By the early 1990s, the new science of glycobiology was beginning to explode. Glycobiology is the study of the biological function of glycoproteins, which are proteins containing very specific sugar molecules. Science was showing that these unique sugars are like letters of the alphabet that are used by our cells to make cellular words. They are necessary for the proper structure and function of every cell in the body and are critical to a properly functioning immune system. This research wasn't lost on the scientific and medical communities, who had begun to invest huge sums of money in the development of new sugar-based drugs. In 1996, Dr. McAnally came to my office carrying a copy of Harper's Biochemistry and showed me the chapter on glycoprotein synthesis that identified that there are 8 sugars required to make cellular words. He pointed out that mannose, the predominant sugar in aloe vera, was the primary sugar in these structures. Science had shown that when any of these sugars are missing from the surface of cells, immune functions are compromised and poor health conditions are allowed to proliferate. Dr. McAnally said, "Here's my hypothesis. No one knows why sugars are missing, but only 2 are common in our typical diet. If we provided them all in a dietary supplement, I think we'd see better results than we've seen from aloe vera alone." Well, we immediately began our research for plant sources of these unique sugars and filed patents on a new composition we developed called ambrotose complex. The impact was immediate. What started as a hypothesis and developed into a product unleashed something that we could only watch in amazement. Although we didn't fully understand it at the time, we had developed and been entrusted with a technology that was way ahead of its time. What we really had discovered was an entirely new category of nutrients that would help lead a global movement towards an integrative approach to modern healthcare. We really wouldn't understand all that for a few years, and perhaps still don't realize its full potential. But I really believe that God had given us a gift that would help us fulfill the original calling that had been placed on our company.
In my large naturopathic clinic, I had researched thousands of products over the years, so I was highly skeptical, maybe even outright resistant at first. But when I realized what was going on here, well, I simply had to be a part of it.
Those early ambrotose years were incredible. People's lives were being changed in several ways, and events were packed. In fact, our Calgary All-Star Convention in 1997 sold out, and Manatech had to schedule 2 conventions back-to-back that weekend to meet the demand. People would leave these events changed because the information would move from their heads to their hearts.
The growth of the company and so many of the leaders in the field was spectacular. And it wasn't growth driven by some breakthrough business strategy. It was driven by giving, by people following their hearts. As people saw the results of these products, they felt compelled to give to people in need.
Because of this sense of destiny and the overwhelming consumer response to ambrotose complex, we developed a unique company culture that was almost the antithesis to the direct selling industry. The typical direct selling model focused on a home-based business opportunity. At Manatech, The focus was primarily on the product and its benefits. The business aspect just seemed to follow. We were quickly developing a culture centered on giving with a true sense of social responsibility. We opened up several new countries in the next few years, but something even more significant was happening. Well, in the late 1990s, we met a caregiver from an orphanage in Romania. She shared a heartbreaking story about how poor nutrition was so devastating to the lives of their children. And you know, at that very moment, I knew that our destiny was tied directly to the caregiver's challenge.
Our hearts have always been for orphans. We've been blessed with 5 adopted children of our own and knew it was our calling to help. We offered to supply enough nutritional support for the following year.
Over the next year, the impact of our products on the quality of life of these kids was unbelievable. As we shared this with our associates, their response was immediate and huge. Our associates have always been givers, and as we established Manna Relief as a not-for-profit organization to distribute these products to children in need, they came aboard in droves. And we were able to go to orphanages in over 80 countries around the world in just the next 10 years. I mean, it was like God had opened up the floodgates, and Manatech began experiencing tremendous growth that carried forward for several years. We were receiving recognition and awards from the world of business, being invited to scientific symposiums. I mean, things were rocking.
Well, this company's a rockin', don't bother knockin'. Yeah, this company's a rockin', don't bother knockin'. Manatech's rockin' it, don't bother, come on in. Oh yeah, look up here. Yeah, Manatech's rockin', don't bother, come on in.
Meanwhile, significant storm clouds were appearing on the horizon. I believe that when you have a ministry component to your business, there will be spiritual battles. We began showing up on the radar screen of powerful vested interest groups in glycobiology and the established scientific community. Science has shown that these sugars were missing from our cells, resulting in compromised health. The issue was what to do about it. And here's where the battle lines formed. The pharmaceutical industry wanted to fill the gaps with synthetic sugar-based drugs. Our solution was the dietary supplementation of plant-based natural sugars. And with potentially billions of dollars of revenue at stake, the scientists investing in synthetic sugar products began to publicly ridicule Dr. McAnally's hypothesis on dietary sugar intervention. They claimed this theory was bogus and even challenged the overwhelming consumer response to Ambertose. The press was quick to report on their accusations, and our business began to suffer. We found ourselves in the fight of our lives. By 2007, the stakes were raised even higher. It was the perfect storm, and we were smack in the middle of its path. Meanwhile, there were some more meanwhiles that gradually came to our awareness. And as usual, some of these were born in the midst of difficulty and uncertainty. During all this conflict, Dr. McAnally announced his plans to retire. And my first thoughts were, how are we going to replace him? And who in their right mind would want to step into this environment? Enter Dr. Rob Sinnott. Controversy didn't even faze this guy. And he would be the man to take us to the next level.
I was aware of Manatech's work in nutritional glycobiology and the obvious controversy surrounding it. As a scientist, I knew that controversy is part of the discovery process, especially when that discovery challenges conventional wisdom or status quo. Manatech had clearly broken new ground with the discovery of glyconutrients. I knew the only way to get past the controversy was to do the science that would silence the critics. We have now invested over $20 million in the last 5 years in new research to help validate our position. In doing so, we have become the world leader in the new field of nutritional glycobiology.